The movie opens with a global catastrophe that has wiped out billions of people, and it cuts to Mallory whispering to her kids, warning them not to make a single sound. She tells them that they're going to cross the river with cloth tied over their eyes, and that none of them are allowed to talk or open their eyes until they reach the place they're heading to. She grabs her birds, puts them inside a box, and starts moving toward the river with the kids while keeping their eyes shut. Then the story jumps back 5 years to the beginning of everything, and we see Mallory at home painting, still pregnant and close to giving birth. Her sister Jessica shows up to check on her, and when they turn on the TV, they see the news talking about a strange phenomenon happening in Russia, something that's causing people to suddenly take their own lives without any explanation. The situation there is completely catastrophic, and governments all over the world are terrified that this thing will reach their countries too. Mallory ignores it and goes with her sister to the doctor to check on the baby. When they arrive at the hospital, she sees a woman talking on her phone, and right after Mallory is done with the checkup, she sees that same woman smashing her head into the glass and killing herself on the spot. Mallory panics and rushes out of the hospital. She gets in the car with Jessica and tells her everything she just saw, and they both get overwhelmed as chaos starts breaking out in the streets, with people acting in disturbing ways and ending their own lives. Suddenly, Jessica's expression changes, like she's seeing something in front of her that's affecting her, and she starts accelerating the car, as if something is forcing her to crash. The car flips over with both of them inside, but luckily they survive. Mallory gets out of the car, horrified, and sees her sister walking slowly toward a passing truck before deliberately throwing herself in front of it. Mallory tries to find any way to get to safety, while people around her are panicking, and she has no idea what's happening. A man named Tom sees her and pulls her to safety, telling her to keep her eyes on the ground. They break into a house to hide, and once inside, they find a group of people already sheltering there, all trying to understand what's going on. They assume that something out there is taking control of people's nervous systems and forcing them to kill themselves. Mallory breaks down in tears, blaming herself for Jessica's death because she was the one who asked her to go to the hospital. After a while, they hear someone desperately knocking at the door, begging to be let in. Tom tells her he'll open the door on one condition. She has to come in with her eyes closed so they know she's safe. She agrees, and they all shut their eyes until she's inside. They confirm she's fine and hasn't been affected. She introduces herself as Olympia, a widow who had to leave her apartment because she had run out of food. She says she needs to eat because she's pregnant and close to giving birth, but unfortunately the group is low on supplies too, and they need to figure out a way to go out and get food without being exposed to whatever is causing the mass deaths. One of them theorizes that looking directly at the affected people is what causes the infection, and that it only happens through direct visual contact. He suggests that maybe if someone watches them through security cameras or a phone screen, they might not be affected. So he decides to test that theory by watching through the surveillance system, isolating himself in a room with the monitors. Then we cut back to the present, with Mallory on the river in a small boat with the kids, their eyes still covered. Suddenly, they're attacked by a man who has been affected by the phenomenon and is trying to force her to remove the blindfold so she can see him and be corrupted too. But she manages to fend him off by hitting him with a sharp object and pushing him into the river. Back in the past, the group is gathered, still trying to figure out how to get food, and Rick suggests going to the supermarket he works at. They accept his plan and start covering the car's windows with newspapers and magazines, relying on the GPS to guide them so none of them have to look outside. When they reach the supermarket, they get out of the car blindfolded, and Charlie manages to unlock the doors. They gather as many supplies as they can, and Mallory finds a box of birds and decides to take it with her. Suddenly, they hear someone screaming at the back entrance, and when they go to check, the birds in Mallory's box start reacting like they're warning them about something. They find a man outside trying to break in, begging them to look at him. They realize he's affected, so Charlie sacrifices himself by pushing the man away and locking himself out with him. Moments later, they see blood spreading under the door and understand that Charlie is gone. They rush back to the house before anything worse happens, only to find that 2 members of the group have already gone outside and disappeared. We return to the present again, 24 hours into the river journey. The boat crashes lightly against a car floating near the bank, and Mallory's son falls into the water along with their bag of food, since that was all they had left. She pulls her son out of the water and realizes they need to find food if they want to continue the journey. She warns the kids to stay exactly where they are and not move while she goes to search. She finds an abandoned orphanage nearby and goes inside to grab blankets. Suddenly, she hears a terrifying sound and runs back into the forest in panic, feeling like something invisible is chasing her. She pulls out her gun and fires randomly in fear. Her daughter hears the gunshots and, worried, ties a rope around herself to track her way back and goes looking for Mallory. She walks carefully toward the sound, but senses a presence close to her, like something unseen is right next to her, trying to lure her. At that moment, Mallory grabs the rope and yanks her back toward the boat, quickly taking both kids and fleeing the area. Back to the past again. Olympia opens the door for a man named Gary, who was begging to be let in. Mallory immediately distrusts him and points a gun at him, afraid he might be infected. Gary claims he's fine and starts telling them how he was hiding in a friend's house until a group of infected people attacked and tried to force him to open his eyes. He explains that there are invisible entities everywhere in the world and that anyone who opens their eyes outside can see them and immediately fall under their influence. These entities take control of the victims and make them follow specific commands, like forcing others to open their eyes and become infected too, spreading the phenomenon even more. Douglas interrupts, saying he doesn't trust Gary and insists they throw him out immediately. The group fears Douglas might be losing it, so they knock him out and lock him in the garage. Both Olympia and Mallory go into labor, and everyone gathers to help them give birth, while Gary's behavior starts getting suspicious, like he's hiding something. He takes advantage of the chaos and begins removing all the newspaper coverings from the windows. Tom notices sunlight coming in from the living room and goes to check, only to be attacked by Gary, who hits him in the head. Gary then heads upstairs where the women are, tearing down the curtains so that the outside can be seen. Olympia looks out the window for just a second and is instantly affected while holding her baby. She tries to jump out the window with the baby in her arms, but Mallory manages to snatch the baby from her just in time, though she can't save Olympia, who throws herself out and dies instantly. Douglas arrives and shoots Gary in the shoulder, and the two struggle, eventually falling down the stairs. Gary stabs Douglas in the chest and kills him, then reaches for the gun to kill the rest, but Tom stops him and beats him with it before rushing upstairs to check on Mallory and the babies. They decide to raise the two children together. 5 years later, they're living in an isolated place deep in the forest. After spending a long time, things start getting harder because their supplies are running low, and the number of the infected people who can see the creatures without dying, the ones whose only goal is to force others to open their eyes, has massively increased. One day, they hear a voice on the radio. Someone speaks to them and says that there's a safe refuge not far from their location, a protected and secure place where people are living peacefully, fully stocked with food, water, and everything they need. He tells Mallory that if she wants to get there, she has to travel down the river all the way to the end of the stream, and when she reaches the sound of many birds, she should turn right. Tom decides to take Mallory and the kids and head towards that place. But on the way, they're ambushed by one of the infected people who have seen the creatures and survived, completely brainwashed and obsessed with making normal people open their eyes. He attacks them and tries to force them to look, but Tom stands in his way and tells Mallory to take the kids and keep going no matter what happens. He keeps fighting them and gets injured, buying time for Mallory to escape with the children and continue the journey alone. On the river, they go through dangerous situations, especially the moment when the boat almost flips and her son nearly falls into the water, and another moment when one of the kids has to open their eyes to guide them through the rapids. Mallory almost tells one of them to do it, but she can't bring herself to choose which one should take the risk, so she decides to continue blind, refusing to let either of them sacrifice themselves. Finally, they reach a place where the sound of birds becomes extremely loud, and she realizes they're close to the refuge. But the infected appear again, calling out to them using familiar voices, trying to lure them into opening their eyes. Mallory grabs the kids tightly by their hands and runs as fast as she can toward a large gate, banging on it with everything she has until the people inside open it. The moment they step in, they find that the place is actually a large sanctuary, filled with people who blinded themselves from the beginning so they could live without the fear of the creatures. The place is also full of birds, because birds are the only living beings that can sense the creature's presence and start screeching whenever one of them comes close. The story ends with the idea that this refuge has become the destination for all survivors, and the birds remain the only warning signal against the presence of the creatures that still exist out there in the world. See you soon with a new film with your channel, Your Fav Summary. Thank you for watching. Bye!